Hello, I'm Jim Cornell, and this is Base to Base, the weekly biotech podcast from Air Coastal Media. Yes, welcome again to the Base to Base biotech podcast, and this is number 30, going out on October the 10th. I still feel like I'm living in a suitcase after getting back from Dublin and now heading out for NLS days in Sweden, pretty much right after this podcast has gone up. Oh, and once I've got everything charged. It used to be that you just went to some place, but now you have devices that need to be charged. I spend hours with plugs all over the house, cameras, microphones, phones, tablets, and goodness knows what else. Still, the weather forecast for Sweden is decent, so that's a bonus. There are also 2 hockey games and a football game while I'm there, so I'm tempted, although I could well be far too tired. And by hockey I mean ice hockey, and by football I mean soccer. It's all so confusing. And as it is October the 10th, it is Walk to a Park Day, it's Mental Health Day, Vet Nurse Day, World Egg Day, and because I'm here in Scotland, I have to mention it is Porridge Day, and I had a bagel for breakfast. I'm ashamed. Last week our guests were George Medicine's CEO Mark Mallon, and then we talked to Jack Hoppin, CEO of Ratio Therapeutics, and John Babich, the company's CSO. This week we have 3 interviews from my recent visit to Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, for Life Sciences Baltics. I did a lot of interviews, so these are the first batch of those, and they are with Keli Therapeutics, Ligence and Samphire. If you do have news or suggestions for who should be on the podcast, or indeed any other suggestions or comments, please do get in touch at jim@deeptechdigest.com, which is also the address you can use if you're interested in advertising with us or sponsoring a podcast episode. Alright, before we move on, let's have a quick look at the news from deeptechdigest.com this past week. Imlifidase has successfully met its primary kidney transplantation endpoint, tumour cells exploit damaged tissue in the pancreas, and a joint venture has been created to develop a small molecule targeting DNA damage response in glioblastoma. A new radiopharmaceutical preclinical CRO has been created. Crystalis Therapeutics has been launched with $205 million to take on gout. And there have been positive results from a Crohn's disease trial. The first gene therapy for a rare subtype of Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease has cleared the first regulatory hurdle. A new antibiotic is targeting IBD, and a blood test for chronic fatigue syndrome has been unveiled. Precision Cell Systems has acquired BenuBio. A collaboration is hoping to create a CAR T cell therapy for brain cancer, and there have been some encouraging results from a Canavan disease trial. You can read all of these and plenty more at deeptechdigest.com. So let's get to the reason why you came here in the first place, and that's the interviews. These are all taken from our visit to Life Sciences Baltics in Vilnius, Lithuania, a couple of weeks ago. So the sound quality varies, especially the one near to a kitchen. You just can't win. It's total silence when you walk in, and as soon as you do, the noise starts. First this week we have a conversation with Arnas Karužas, CEO of Ligence, a company using artificial intelligence to automate echocardiography. Well, thanks for doing this, and I wonder if maybe you could start with a little bit of background on the company.
Yeah, of course. So we founded our company 5 years ago, and our company main focus is heart ultrasound and automatization of heart ultrasound. So we're targeting into the daily workflow of physician or sonographer, and we want to create automatization and standardization into it. So meaning that probably you remember how physicians previously used stethoscopes on their necks to detect heart murmurs, main cardiac diseases. Now it is out of the practice, and every cardiologist or sonographer now performs the heart ultrasound as a key test to detect it. But the problem that this test is really time consuming, and every physician or sonographer needs to perform approximately 100 button clicks to perform many measurements, and on top of this reporting part as well. So we created the AI-based software, which it creates fully automated approach. So meaning that we can detect the images, we performing the measurements, and as the last and the key part, we providing the initial report for the physician. So we're replicating all key steps, and physician just need to check and approve or adjust if it is necessary.
And how is what you're doing an advance on what was being done previously, and how does it help physicians?
Yes, I think so. Because the main idea that this test is really very operator depending. It is very subjective, and there are a lot of misinterpretation. There are huge numbers of misinterpretation, which can lead into very serious consequences for the patient. That's why we're bringing AI, which we already proved and validated and showed our at least non-inferiority to the expert cardiologist. So we are bringing for every patient 2 opinions. So meaning every patient gets 2 physicians or AI plus physician evaluation. And this is really creating and allowing to not miss something. And as well, we can reduce significantly the time because we just eliminating that manual part, bringing that AI, and our software can analyze everything in 1 minute, provide all the measurements and reporting, where physicians just checking and approving.
And I guess that's better for the patient as well, because it's less time.
Exactly. This is a key part as well, because now I think in EU average waiting lines for this everyday test is from 5 to 6 weeks. So we can bring and we can allow for the patients to get this test much more faster. And we even creating opportunity to do this test for maybe not so experienced physician, because the AI can provide the biggest part of knowledge and measurements, and we can help for the younger physician not to do mistakes.
And with the current advances in AI, it's now able to pick up things that physicians can't, I guess.
Sometimes yes, and mostly it is directed into very disease-specific approach when AI detects very specific patterns. Now we are moving into this direction as well, because our initial goal was to direct into the workflow. But now we are working to detect very particular patterns in the heart that AI could provide for the physician the initial diagnosis, for example, of amyloidosis, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or valvular pathology. And this is a very important approach, I think, where AI in the future could really provide the real value for the physicians and the patients as well.
Right, and because AI is constantly evolving, does that mean that your products are constantly evolving as well?
You know, probably the key idea that we are constantly improving the algorithms that we are providing. So we constantly providing the new data sets. We are adopting into particular market or country, because, you know, different markets have very specific behaviors, habits, how they are performing the test, different protocols. So we need to adopt, sometimes even retrain a bit AI to provide full value for the concrete hospital or site. Because we're using supervised models, so we are the teachers of them, and we're always trying to improve them. But even when you're having the release, and for example, we are commercially available in EU market because we have CE mark and MDR approval. But despite of this, we're always trying to increase the accuracy even more and expand our features into more fields that we could provide more and more value for the physicians and patients.
And I guess the more data you have, the more that improves too.
Exactly. The data is the key part in the improvement, and especially very well prepared data, which we're using for training. It is really fundamental part in AI development and improvement part. As well, now we have a huge focus into expanding validation sites. Now we're working in the United States with several really well-known sites like Johns Hopkins, Yale, to validate and to bring more evidence for the world how our AI software and our Ligence Heart product can perform. And we're very happy that more and more very really amazing results coming. Now very recently we've done the trial in Dresden University Hospital in Germany. And I think we were one of the first in the world in AI and heart ultrasound field. We demonstrated a superiority compared with the expert cardiologist, and these data was compared with the CT images as a gold standard in some particular measurements. So we were happy. This data was presented in a huge congresses as a late-breaking science. So we were happy that we did it, and I think this is a very important proof and testimonial how AI can be important.
Definitely. And where are your products being used globally?
Now mostly in EU market and United States. In EU we are fully commercial available now, but in United States probably next month, so we plan to receive our first FDA approval. And in the beginning of 2026, even the second one, FDA approval. So very, very soon we will be commercially available in the United States.
Excellent. And you're here at Life Sciences Baltics. What does that mean for the company?
First of all, that we are Lithuanian based. This is very important, and we're very happy that we are first in Lithuania who are working this in AI and heart ultrasound field. And this is really important, and we want to create, we are very paying more attention to education, because this is the congress and conference where a lot of physicians are participating. So we want to educate them to create more knowledge about it, how it is working, and I think this is a very great networking opportunity.
Right, and how important is that, getting the message out to physicians?
I think this is very important, because if we're looking 5 years ago when we started, physicians in general are quite conservative, and especially when AI was not so known. Now it is really changing, and I think it's changing a lot, that we creating more and more knowledge and physicians becoming more open to know and to adopt AI into their daily practice. This is a crucial part that AI could come into it. So this is the key reason why it is so important to communicate with all the physicians. And because I'm a physician as well, so my background is cardiology, for me it's even more exciting to do this, because it is my community, and I see a lot of value there.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you see the field of cardiology and AI and the kind of things that you're doing? Where do you see that being in maybe 3 to 5 years' time, and where do you see your company developing in that time?
I think this field is crucial, because it is really well known that cardiovascular disease are #1 killer in the world, and chronic disease conditions are growing a lot, especially conditions like heart failure because of aging population. And I think AI will become essential part. It is definitely, and all of us and physicians just need to understand that we need to adopt these assistants and friends that we're creating. And our goal and vision is that we could create the standardization and improvement globally in the world, in all the markets, in all the countries. That's why our direction as a company turning very much into collaborations with the big players like PACS companies, hardware manufacturers, because I think this is the key way how we can reach as many hospitals as it is possible. And we're looking into that direction, how we can adopt AI not only for the cardiologist, but as well for the primary care physicians, emergency care physicians, internalists, intensivists, so meaning not so much experienced physicians, looking into handheld ultrasound devices, even maybe in the very future devices at home, where AI could help to detect very initially, very primary, most common heart pathologies like heart failure.
Just one example there of the excellent work coming out of Lithuania, a country with only about 3 million people. Next, Keli Therapeutics is a Lithuanian company advancing next-generation cell therapies for acute and chronic inflammatory conditions. And we chatted with Justinas Mačiulaitis, Keli Therapeutics founder and CEO. All right, so maybe then if you could first tell me just a bit of background on the company.
Yeah. So I'm a founder, my name is Justinas. I'm a founder of the Keli Therapeutics. The company has been established roughly 6-7 years ago, but we've been working on the idea for the last 15 plus years. So the company was created with the idea to develop products for diseases that are currently untreatable, and we have several technologies in the pipeline that are enable us to target different indications, namely inflammatory conditions and some musculoskeletal disorders.
And what are you specifically working on in terms of those inflammatory diseases?
Yeah. So we've started working on kidney injury treatment many years ago. My father, he's a nephrologist, a very prominent nephrologist, and so it was a natural course to go into this indication. We want to develop a medicine to treat acute kidney injury, which is a very common complication after cardiac surgery operations. And currently this disease is not treatable. It's treatable, but it's a very palliative treatment, very, very ineffective. And 40% of patients end up with some sort of kidney failure after cardiac surgery. So we want to develop a medicine that changes that and actually prevents the kidney disease going into acute kidney disease, going into a chronic disease, which then on itself brings in a lot of economic burden to globally. So we're developing placental mesenchymal stromal cells that have a very wide range of mode of action and really very little or no side effects. So we see this technology as a way to counteract the currently used biological therapy, which in effect has a very or somewhat narrow mode of action, targets only very few specific pathways or just only a single specific pathway, whereas technologies like cell therapy, they're enabling the targeting of multiple of those, because the disease is like a ball of different cytokines not working with each other. So the idea is to develop a therapy that works in a wider scope with a little less side effects. And so kidney injury is the first indication that we're going into. After we demonstrate the safety and efficacy in our currently ongoing phase 1b/2 clinical trial, we'll be able to go into a significant wider net of different indications.
Mm-hmm. And the first one that you're working on with kidneys, is that something that other companies are tackling, or are you kind of out on your own with that?
Yeah, so we did some market research, and currently this indication is being addressed by other companies. Not by many, but it is. Only with different modalities, different treatments, different types of drugs, different types of medicines. You have biologicals, you have small molecules. There is not a single trial currently in the world that's addressing this technology with the stem cells, with placental mesenchymal stem cells. Hopefully, we will be able to demonstrate that that's possible, because we've seen that in our non-clinical studies. So hopefully we will be able to not lose the efficacy in the translation from non-clinical to clinical.
Is that something that's applicable to other conditions?
Absolutely. So if you can imagine, inflammatory conditions, they share very similar pathogenic pathways. You have increase in cytokines, you have increase in interleukins, some specific interleukins, you have an increase in TNF, alpha, and different other cytokine molecules that actually cause the disease initially. And if the inflammation is sustained for a prolonged period, then it turns into a chronic disease, and then all the major global conditions happen. So if we're able to stop the inflammation at the beginning when it's starting, we're effectively treating the patient and preventing from him going to other chronic diseases. By treating acute condition of kidney injury, we're able to prevent the chronicity and the transition to the chronic kidney disease. The same applies to any other indication. There's significantly more challenge to treat the already established chronic disease, but if we can treat acute conditions first, I think chronic diseases is definitely achievable. And we're already working on that. We employ some genetic engineering approaches that we see it going into a wide scope of not only acute but chronic diseases as well.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that you were looking at skeletal. Is that the similar
the skeletal
process? Yeah.
So with skeletal diseases, we've been approved to commercialize cartilage regeneration technology locally here, and I'm an orthopedic surgeon by training. So this was our first, so to say, development that we have developed. We're now working on new versions of that technology, but we're able now to regrow the knee cartilage tissue from the cells. So the cells are as a building block of the tissue, which if you damage the cartilage, whether it's knee, hip, or ankle, it doesn't go back. So you have to add something to it as a building block that then brings back the cartilage. So this is the technology that we have already been approved for, and we're now commercializing it here locally in Lithuania, so the patients effectively can come to Lithuania to get the treatment.
And how does that work? How is it administered?
So the current version of the product is working as we have a small procedure where we take the small tissue sample from the knee joint. That's the cartilage tissue, and that's about a 20-minute procedure. Then the biopsy is then shipped to our facility for manufacturing. The manufacturing takes roughly about a month, and then it's then reimplanted back into the patient. There's no other technology that's really able to replicate the efficacy of the technology because you're actually working with replicate the efficacy because you're actually working with the cells, with the material that creates the cartilage. The only way to make it better is to simplify the procedure, to make it more easier for patients, more easier for doctors, which we're doing now, and we're nearly completed with that. So instead of 2 surgeries, you will have only 1 surgery. But realistically, it's the technology that then will enable the patient to forget about the problems that they had with the knee. Because now it's not enough for patients to not feel pain. People want to be active. People want to do sports. They want to do skiing or hiking. So not feeling pain is not good enough. So people want to be active again.
And is that something that it has to come from the patient, or could you take cartilage from somebody else?
So this is what as of now, we are taking it from the patient because some patients, they want to have their own tissue, and the efficacy is really high in these technologies because if you think about it, a patient has a problem with knee, and it's their once in a life, procedure that they do. So, they can do the procedure and then forget about the problem for the rest of their lives. But other patients, they don't mind having other tissues as well. So that involves only one procedure, and realistically the efficacy is comparable. So it really depends on the patient. And of course there are other factors that influence that, but there are a couple ways about how to go about it.
All right. And you seem to be one of the few companies in Lithuania that are actually taking your products all the way from the beginning to the end. Is that something that you see happening more here?
I would say so. There's always could be more, but Lithuania is really not that big of a country. But given the size of the country, I think the concentration of talent, of work, of ideas, and vision is really high, concentration-wise. But yes, you're absolutely right that now Lithuania is mostly, the contract country, contract development and manufacturing country. So we have companies mostly focusing on developing products for other companies, US companies, UK companies, European Union companies. But there's definitely talent to go take the product from the research, from bench effectively, all the way through the development phase, then through the regulatory phase, through the manufacturing phase, and then clinical translational phase, and then the commercialization phase. So it is always good to have companies that have gone through this full life cycle. And sometimes we don't even know what other companies know that we don't know. And so it's very good that we're a small country and we're able to communicate with each other. Sometimes there's competition. It'd be best if we had less competition amongst ourselves. So let's compete against diseases. Let's compete against the common denominator, the common enemy that we all have, which is the diseases. And there will be room for everyone under the sun.
Right, and I guess as well, it's for a small country. It's not just Vilnius, though. There's Kaunas is quite a.
Yep, absolutely. So it's really small country. So the largest distance from Lithuania is furthest part to the other one is 400 kilometers, 150 miles or 200 miles across, which is really nothing. So we have people that are coming to work from Vilnius to Kaunas every day. We have people that are going to work from Kaunas to Klaipėda every day. So really, it's not about the distance, and it's I take sometimes when I lived in the US, you take more to go to New York City from New Jersey over the bridge than you take to go from Kaunas to Vilnius. So it's not about the distance, and we are now seeing already people coming back to Kaunas also, because most of the biotech is situated in Vilnius, but Kaunas is really stepping up, and we're bringing more people back to Kaunas now.
Right. And are partnerships really important to any company in Lithuania, but your company as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So even we're now running a clinical trial, a multi-center European clinical trial. We've received the European Innovation Council funding, so only 2 companies from Lithuania received that. And we are now running a 3-country multi-country trial that involves Lithuania, Greece, Germany, and Denmark. So we have to have partners in these countries, in these clinical sites. Some of the competencies you mentioned that we cannot find in Lithuania because of lack of activity in that space. So we have to look for people that are understanding how to run the clinical trial. We find those people in the United Kingdom, for example. For the manufacturing, there is a very specific manufacturing approach for ATMPs, for advanced therapeutic medicinal products. We don't have those in Lithuania, or have very little of them, so we have to find them in other countries. So UK is also being one of them. UK has a very high concentration and knowledge of this life cycle of drug development. So we try to look for people not country dependent, but talent dependent, absolutely.
And so what's next for the company?
We really want to successfully complete the phase 1 study We're confident about the safety. We really want to demonstrate the efficacy. And we have designed the efficacy. We have designed the study in the way to where we have a very high chance of demonstrating the efficacy. We have very robust clinical data. So only 2 phases will be needed for us to go for the marketing authorization in European Medicines Agency for the conditional marketing authorization. So our goal is to now really excel in this clinical trial. And then we're able to, if we show that, then we're able to go into many other indications. And we will partner with companies. We'll do strategic partnerships. Some will do on our own. But this will open up a door to a lot of different indications, more access to many patients.
And I know you can't be 100% accurate, but what kind of timeline are you looking at for what you're doing?
So the trial. So we are now in the process of discussing the agreement terms with the clinical sites. We are transferring part of the manufacturing to our manufacturing organizations, to our contract manufacturing organizations, because we have yet to obtain the GMP license. We still have a couple of months to go, but we have to start that study now. So we split the manufacturing in two, where we do one part of the manufacturing, the other part is transferred to our contract manufacturing organization, and then contracts with the clinical sites. And we have to enroll our first patient early next year. So first quarter next year, we have to enroll our first patient.
I so hope I'm getting the Lithuanian pronunciations at least close. I really like being in Lithuania. It's a great place, and Keli is definitely doing some very good work in the field. There's a big and growing life sciences hub in Vilnius, and there are also hubs in Kaunas and Klaipėda. Next, we're talking about women's health with Samphire Therapeutics CEO Emilė Radytė. So maybe then to start, if you could just give me a bit of the rundown on the company.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Dr. Emilė Radytė. I'm a neuroscientist by training. So I was born and raised in Lithuania and then did most of my training abroad. So I spent 4 years for my undergraduate at Harvard and then went to Oxford for my master's and PhD, always focusing on kind of the brain and how it impacts our everyday experiences. And more specifically during my PhD, I was a researcher in depression, specifically understanding why mental health remains such a barrier and why many people need to go through multiple treatments before they see effects. About 5 years ago, I was working as a depression researcher and speaking to a lot of my patients and realized that a lot of them were women, number one. And when you asked women when their depressive symptoms started, a lot of them pointed to hormonally sensitive events. So the one we know most commonly is postpartum depression. So after giving birth to a child, noticing these changes in mood, but also others around menopause. So noticing that a lot of women, as they hit perimenopause and menopause, so around the age from as early as 35 to 55, starting to see these mood changes related to that hormonal change, as well as before periods, kind of starting to see those differences. And yet they were not considered at all in psychiatry. They're not considered when it comes to prescribing treatments or revising treatments, etc. So I started Samphire in 2021 in September with a mission of essentially bringing solutions that put the brains first when it comes to women's health. Since then, we've done a lot of things. We're first and foremost an R&D company building actual solutions for women that improve their quality of life today. So we have a couple of products. Our main product is called Nettle. It's a brain stimulation device. It's a Class 2A CE-marked medical treatment for PMS and menstrual pain. The front of the headband deals with the mood symptoms, so changing low mood symptoms, and the back of the headband deals with pain symptoms. And so it's an approved treatment now available across the UK and EU. It's also reimbursable in some of the markets, and we are, for example, running trials with the NHS to get it approved for women living with endometriosis and chronic pelvic pain. So the idea is to deal with conditions that may not be directly impacting their women's fertility, but generally impacting their everyday well-being and quality of life, where hormone and drug options may be insufficient or have side effects or may not just be viable. And then we also have an ecosystem, so an application that essentially kind of tracks all of your symptoms, can sync with any wearables if you have them, and essentially give you recommendations of a personalized protocol for the use of our neurotechnology, but also for just understanding, is this something that even impacts you? Because a lot of women don't even know what their cycle looks like and which symptoms are actually linked to their cycles and which ones are not, especially as they near that perimenopause phase as well. So yeah, we're a team of 14 based in London, between London and the States, and we'll continue innovating in women's health. Women accept so many side effects. If you read the leaflets of the stuff that women do to themselves, from hormones to these patches, and I do think they make a difference. I think for us, it's just women have always had so few options available to us. So for us, it has always been about one, women need to understand their bodies better, because when we go to doctors don't give us answers. And I suspect, As heard that when at home, but I suspect when she went to the doctor, they would be great, you're perimenopausal, deal with it. Here's a patch, here's a pill, this is how you deal with it, instead of actually educating women how to understand their bodies a little bit and then choose what the right solution is for them. Because I think, as someone who has spent so much time researching this space, is that women are very curious about their bodies, but then don't get the answers, and then they can become easy prey for vitamins and things like that will fix problems, because no one can break down the science behind it. So
yeah, well, I think that with a lot of things, there's a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. You go in and, it's perimenopause or it's menopause, and there's not really any testing or any variability between women. It's almost as if, every woman is alike, so this is going to work or not work.
I think you're exactly on point. And if I learned anything over the last 5 years working so closely with women, is that we're not at all alike. And it's one of those things where, as a woman building in the space as well, I always recognize that my experience is so vastly different from so many other women's, while obviously trying to relate. And I just think that a lot of these things are unfortunately systemic problems, and that it's easier to try to get the women out the door quickly, and that requires, kind of giving them an easy answer, this is menopause, but, and that's not always satisfying. And I think women are asking for more answers. This is, I think, the first generation where people are demanding their information to be better, and the scientists need to do better in communicating what we do day in, day out, communicating the research, communicating the evidence, and communicating stuff we don't know. There's a lot of things we know, but there's a lot of stuff about even our technology and the way that we see women responding to it that we're still learning about every day. So that's why for us, I always start with saying we're an R&D company, because we continue learning about our users, what benefits them most, what protocols work best for them every single day, and we learn from our users.
So is that a device that's constantly evolving?
Yes and no, in the sense that the way we conceive it fitting into women's lives continues evolving, in the sense of making sure, we always want to make sure that women use as few sessions as they need to get the biggest impact on their life, because we don't want to be burdensome. So the average woman will need to use Nettle for about 5 days leading up to their period for 20 minutes a day. So it's really a very lightweight solution, and for the 20 minutes you can do whatever you want. On our app, we recommend, based on your preferences, kind of breath work, meditation, visualization, but you can also be writing emails, watching TV, it can be whatever you want. So that approach has kept evolving. On the other hand, we are a medical device, which means we are making medical claims. We are a regulated product, which means the way that the device actually works and looks is tightly regulated, and we can't change it on a whim continuously. This product has been on the market since 2024. In early 2026, we will have a second version being released, so that's going to be the first hardware iteration off of that. We're very excited about it because it will have things like wireless charging, it's going to be much more portable and things like that. So that's responding to the need of our users, I want to have it with me all the time, I travel a lot, I go hiking or whatever it may be, and making sure it fits into their lives and routines. And that's why it was so important for us that it's simple. So it looks literally like a headband, it literally looks like a style thing, you probably could think that I just was wearing it as an accessory. And that was important for us. We didn't want a medical device that looks medical, because we do think that's an outdated approach. And two is it needed to be very simple to use. So even though it's neurotechnology, which could sound scary, it only has one button. This is just a charger hole, but essentially it has one button that you use and then can use Nettle very easily. It connects automatically to your phone. It kind of personalizes to your cycle, to your needs. And as your symptoms improve, your number of sessions reduces as well. So it's incredibly dynamic. But yeah, we wanted to make sure that you don't need to be tech savvy. You don't need to understand all of the science. If you want to, you can, but ultimately you can treat it as easy as a solution as a pill as well. Was very important for us.
And how, obviously it's quite technical, but how does it work?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, our claims are on two types of symptoms: mood on the other hand, which obviously came from the depression research literature, and pain on the other hand, which came from the chronic pain literature and evidence. So the front of the headband works on mood and the back of the headband works on pain. How do they work exactly? So both of them use electrical pulses. The brain communicates in two main ways. One is electricity for fast signals, and two is neurotransmitters, or the chemical communication pathways. So most drugs operate on the chemical pathways. We operate on the electric pathways. Is kind of the high level to think about it. But the mechanisms for pain and mood are different. For mood, we know that in the week leading up to the period, or if your symptoms are severe, it could be even 2 weeks leading up to your period, called the luteal phase. Essentially, we see that the prefrontal cortex of women becomes unbalanced, and the higher the symptoms you experience, the more imbalanced it becomes. Specifically, the left hemisphere becomes less active, and then the right hemisphere becomes more active. And while normally they should communicate evenly and allow you to control your emotions, so interpret what makes you sad, what makes you happy, when you have that imbalance, it's called alpha asymmetry, so it's literally alpha range waves that can be recorded with an EEG. They become unbalanced in that PMS period, and when your two hemispheres can't communicate, there's no more top-down control over your emotions. So if you're feeling a little bit sad or triggered, you're feeling very, very sad. And that's what we say as low mood or depressed mood before your period. If you're a little bit angry or irritated, you become incredibly angry, and we see angry outbursts in the week leading up to your period. And so, or if you're suddenly a little bit sad, you get very sad, and then a little bit happy, very happy, you see the mood swings characteristic of PMS. And so while these sound like vastly different symptoms, they all come back to this lack of top-down regulation of emotion. So there's that imbalance in the week leading up to your period, and our headband literally sits on that prefrontal cortex of the brain, right here, and then essentially it adds electricity into the left side of the brain and then grounds it into the right hand side of the brain, so that as it kind of tries to go out of balance, we restore it, restoring your own top-down control. So stimulation is very, very weak. The idea is just not to let your brain go out of balance and to restore it back. So usually people see effects within a single month, but pretty much everyone sees effects within 3 months. That's why we actually give free returns for 3 months, because we're so confident in our technology working and being reliable. On the pain side, it's a little bit of a different story. So essentially we work on pain sensitivity thresholds. So you and I will have different pain perception. Things that might be very painful to me might mean nothing to you, and vice versa. For women, in the week leading up to your period, their pain sensitivity even further increases. So even if I was touching, for example, a very hot plate, I may say, ouch, later in, like normally I may not be too sensitive, but then as my period nears, I may become more sensitive to it. And so essentially we know that that pain sensitivity threshold for women kind of decreases before their period, so they become more sensitive to pain. And so what the stimulation in the back over the motor cortex does is it indirectly stimulates the posterior insula, which is a part very deep in the brain that is responsible for essentially regulating that threshold, and we don't let it go down. So as it tries to go down, we pick it back up. As it goes down, we pick it back up. And that's why you need to use it daily in that period before, because it's kind of like, so we use neuroplasticity, so it's kind of like training your brain, like workouts. Like if you worked out incredibly intensively for 3 days and then never worked out again, you wouldn't have that much muscle. So that's why it requires that repetition every single month.
And what about in situations where, for example, somebody is taking medication for depression or anxiety? Would there be any concern about that?
None. In fact, if anything, that's one of the most important things that we want to contribute. Like, you know, as someone who's worked in psychiatry and with a brain, I think medication has been game-changing in general for people living with mental health disorders, such as antidepressants, anxiolytics, and things like that. And also we know that, you know, painkillers have changed lives, you know, hormonal contraceptives have changed the role of women in society as well. So medications can play different roles and have been really useful. That being said, they do often have side effects and they might not work for everyone. So we really wanted to offer a solution that is both compatible with all of those options, but also could be used alongside or potentially replace them. So you can use Nettle because it's kind of based on neurotechnology. It can be used alongside any medication. It will not interfere with it. It can be used alongside hormonal contraception or other type of hormonal treatments as well. And actually, an interesting finding that we've had is we've just surveyed our people who have been using Nettle for over a year. And so we noticed that when people have used Nettle for about 3 months, they do actually decrease their use of medication, even though they might have started using it alongside. So we saw that 89% of people using Nettle within 3 months changed the way they use their medication. Most prevalently, just above 80% of people change and reduce the amount of painkillers they take. So that's actually the biggest impact. The pain effect seems to be most easy to also measure because people know that they used to take like 10 painkillers per day during their period, and now even if it's 2 or maybe none at all, we see that massive difference. We also know that about a quarter, so about 25% of people may choose to discontinue hormonal contraception if they're able to then manage their symptoms using Nettle and maybe other solutions as well. And we see about 22% of people within 3 months decreasing their use of SSRIs, so antidepressant medication as well. So for us, we don't take a position on whether it's good or bad for people to take medication alongside. Ultimately, we want to make sure that women live high quality lives and find whatever treatment combination works for them. But organically in our population, we do see that a lot of people seem to transition to nettle as a way to reduce side effects from very high doses of these medications and just kind of create a more sustainable long-term way of combining these treatments together.
Does it need to be prescribed?
Nettle does not need to be prescribed. It can be offered by a physician who is trained, especially in the UK and Germany. I'd say we have the largest communities of educated doctors. We also offer kind of continuing education credits for doctors who are keen to learn about our technology and learn how to prescribe it, etc. But it can be accessed online by everyone. And that was a very proactive choice for us when we were getting regulated, to show that people could buy it online and use it safely by themselves. Because a lot of women, unfortunately, do not trust their doctors with this type of information, because they usually have had an experience of going to a doctor, complaining about a painful period, and being turned away. And so we always wanted to make sure that we are accessible separately, but our long-term plan is definitely to be reimbursed and prescribed by doctors, just so women don't have that much of an onus to educate themselves and find solutions themselves, and obviously to increase price accessibility as well.
Unfortunately, we live in a day and age of social media and hundreds of companies selling all kinds of cures. How do you set yourself apart and educate people as to the difference between something that is going to do absolutely nothing for you, but I mean, I know that it's certified, but how do you kind of make that distinction?
I think that's really, really hard. And it's hard from a couple of perspectives, in that the average consumer only goes on social media, doesn't necessarily read scientific literature per se. So that's a hard place to differentiate yourself. For many years, and we've always put education at the forefront of what we do, because a lot of people, when they think of women's health, they think of hormones. And hormones are obviously a key part governing women's lives, but it's the brain that decides what hormone and how much you get released. So if you have unregulated hormones, it's usually linked to some dysregulation in brain activity. So we used to do these like very long educational videos, but with the current attention span on social media, you can't even differentiate yourself with the science and education, because people are always looking for clickbaity stuff. So we are still struggling on, kind of separating those all. We've gone through, clinical trials. We've gone through medical certification. We're trying to go through clinicians. Though I would say a lot of women trust social media a lot more than their doctors, which is, again, another challenge. But I ultimately believe that the most important voice is that of our users. So, for example, on Trustpilot, we have lots of people who have shared their experiences with both painful periods, with mood symptoms around their periods, and how much nettle has been game-changing. And I'm kind of the belief that ultimately, if you're a real type of product, long-term, you will have users who become your main advocates. And science is obviously a necessary part to it, because it needs to work. But ultimately, people are using nettle because it works and because it doesn't have side effects, not necessarily because it's scientific per se. Like, that's not that attractive to people necessarily. So we'll continue educating and communicating, and we do have a very engaged audience in that sense. But I just urge every woman to look for certifications. I think that's always one way of doing it. 2, look for user reviews. And 3, see if the companies or the people building products put their, I don't know what it's called, their foot where their mouth is, or whatever that is. But for example, we offer a 3-month returns policy. So it means if over 3 months you don't see an effect, you can return it, and our returns rate is under 5%. And so to me, that's actually a very big signal that we gave people literally 3 cycles to see how to best use nettle for themselves, and most of them decided that it works for them. And that's, to me, as someone who needs to wake up every morning and work on this, that's to me the biggest motivator, because ultimately science has always been used against women and pro-women, but ultimately, we do need to make sure things actually work and make a difference.
For sure. You mentioned the second iteration of that. Are there any other things that you're working on as well as this?
Yeah, so we are always continuing to innovate on our kind of software platform. So it's a way for women to get to know their cycle, input their real symptoms, and we really focus on viewing periods and cycles differently. So a lot of people are a period is the day you bleed, and that's your period, and that's what you know. And a lot of generations of women have grown up with this being everything they know. We're now changing that perspective where actually you should know when your ovulation is, because that determines when your symptoms could be starting. You should know what type of work to do different times, how to exercise, and things like that. So we continue innovating on that space, using both data from wearables and things like that, but also women's own inputs about what makes a difference in their own lives. And then we are planning to release a hardware product for wellness purposes in the US in mid-October this year. And then we also have a product for menopause in the works. I mean, our long-term vision is that women's health shouldn't be disjointed. Like now, you're kind of treated as a woman of reproductive age who's not trying to get pregnant. Then you're a woman of reproductive age who's trying to get pregnant. Then you're kind of being pregnant, postpartum, being a mom, and then you go through menopause. And all of these women are supposedly different markets. And for me, that's problematic because it's the same woman going through all those journeys. And we do know that women's journeys do look a lot more diverse and usually much less linear at this point in time. And so for us, it's about being able to, one, educate women about their bodies, and that's why we have the software platform. Because once you know your body, then you can choose your best option, and that's the only thing we wish for. And then one of the solutions could be ours, it could be others, and they could be compatible. And so we'll aim to provide solutions where we think we can make a difference. So Nettle is one on the menstrual well-being side, and then we think there's one that we can really offer for women undergoing menopause, and then we'll continue researching and see where science actually gives us opportunities to innovate further.
I really enjoyed all of the interviews in Lithuania, and there are video components for each of them as well, so they will likely find their way into the world soon too. Samphire is definitely another very innovative company doing some great and necessary work in women's health. Anyway, that's it for this week's podcast. If you are at NLS Days in Sweden next week, do say hello. I'll be the tall person wandering around doing interviews. Although if you already know me, you don't need a description. If you do want to get in touch with guest opportunities, which we don't charge for, by the way, or if you want to advertise, please feel free to contact us at jim@deeptechdigest.com. So, until next week, wherever in the world you are, I hope you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Base to Base Biotech podcast. The Base to Base Biotech podcast is an Air Coastal Media Limited production.